Hi guys and welcome to this video. Today I will interview Mohammed. He will tell us how he got admitted into the best MBA programs in the world. Welcome Mohammed and thank you for being here. I will start by talking about your profile. So tell me more about yourself. I want to know how old are you? What's your background? What and where did you study? Can you walk me through your professional experience? Have you been involved in any notable extracurricular activities? And why do you want to do an MBA now? And finally, what are your target schools? Tell me everything.
Amazing. That's a lot to go through. I'm glad I'm with you here, Anis. Honestly, I had great relationship working with you and your team so far. So I'm happy to be on this call. Do you want us to go like question by question? How what
Yeah,
like
yeah,
how
yeah,
you would like
yeah,
us to approach
exactly,
it?
exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
let's do it.
Question by question, yeah.
Cool. So you know my name. My name is Mohammed Al Ghafari. I'm originally from Iraq, and I am 29 years old. Um, I was born in Iraq and lived there for about 7 years up until the 2003 Gulf War. Then my family and I had to relocate and essentially evade the war to Jordan. And so we stayed in Jordan for about 9 years, and we applied for a refugee in the U.S. So after 9 years of living in Jordan, our papers were processed and we moved to the U.S. in 2013. I've been living in the D.C. area ever since, sort of like halfway through high school. I completed here, then graduated and went to the University of Maryland, College Park. It's about like a university is about 30 minutes away from Washington, D.C. That's really where I studied finance and information systems. I was a double major over there. From there, I graduated. I always dreamed about opening my own startup. So the idea plan A was, hey, I'm gonna graduate, I'm gonna build a company and never have to apply. Let's just say it did not work out that way. And I had to apply for a job. I think the role that most aligned with my interest because I was thought what job would give me the most exposure to a lot or various problems out there and also connects me with a network that is willing to look at these random problems, random dots across different client sets and combine them. So I thought consulting made a lot of sense for me. So that's when I applied to Deloitte and I started worked there for about a year. And then from there, I had the same itch for building a startup, which is why I decided to leave Deloitte. And it sort of happened where like I was working on my own idea at the time, and I found another startup that I was an employee at. So I was like founder at one and employee at one, and juggling between the two of them. My own idea did not play out that well, so I had to close it down after a year to 2 years. But the startup that I was an employee at started taking off pretty well. And the CEO that I was working under, he was incredible, to be honest. His name is Jaron Paul. So far, he's spun off like four different companies. One sold to Morgan Stanley, one Thomson Reuters. Can't remember where the first one went, but it's like someone that I really wanted to learn from. So the one that we were working at, which is basically software SaaS or a software automation tool that we built, and he was targeting basically we're either gonna go public with it or an acquisition by a company. The acquisition route worked better for us, and Salesforce decided to acquire us 2 years ago. So the acquisition went through. I joined the Salesforce team through that acquisition in 2024, and I've been working with them also within the consulting realm ever since. And this brings us to 2025 or toward the later ends of that when I decided that, hey, I want to go back to school. I felt like I had a breadth of experiences within consulting as startups, but it's sort of been approached solo on my own, trying to learn how to build a business, how to scale it, learning about consulting on my own from like the colleagues that I have and so on. But now that I know what kind of skills that will help me within these two industries, I felt like an MBA program would be an ideal place to do that. And most recently, to your question about like what made you decide on this, I think the biggest decision, a lot of people also argued with me about the value of the MBA in this age, especially with like the revolution AI that we're going through, and people saying, "Hey, well, you might graduate and it's a different kind of jobs that I might have." Honestly, I argued back against a lot of that, and this is really how I sold it to myself before like I committed to that, is that if this is a revolution that we're going through, then I think the best way to approach a revolution is by sitting down a bit, thinking about the holistic change in this entire world, and making an investment into something. So if you're busy with your job, if you're overworked, you don't really have the time to take that wide lens look at what's going on, what is changing in this world, where do I want to develop more skills or emphasize certain things. So this is really why I picked like this time, and this time specifically for me, like this year, I thought that I applied to so many MBA programs, like because I was like, I need to get into a program because this is the right time to dedicate my time to figure out, hey, how is the industry being shaped and be part of this revolution. The second piece of it is if this is like a lot of people are predicting, is like, hey, AI is going to have a huge influence on our jobs, and again, maybe like reductions or maybe any of the other like negative commentaries or predictions that are happening from it. To be honest, I still think that an MBA program, despite what a lot might argue, is the best approach here, because the value of the relationships that you have is what's going to outlast any other skills that maybe other majors or specializations will offer you. I think at the end of the day, if we're able to automate, I'm an optimist. I think it's a good thing for the world. If we're able to offload a lot of the tasks that are out there for machines or tools. So what leaves us, and what that leaves us with, is your connections to people and your collaboration with them, being able to work with them. So that's also another like pitch that I had, like some of my sales and people who argued with me about like, why are you doing this program? They think it's valuable these days. Sorry, I know I said a lot, but
No,
going back
great,
to
great. We'll discuss later about AI at the end. So great.
amazing.
Continue.
Amazing. So there we go. So we covered where I grew up, where I worked, my motives. Um, application wise, in terms of like, sorry, go ahead.
No, we still need to talk about your extracurricular activities and
Yeah.
your target schools. I think we've covered
Perfect.
all the other questions.
Awesome. So extracurriculars, I'm a huge nerd, to be honest. If you know me, since I was like in school, like even after school. In school I was like dabbling with a lot of like startup ideas and businesses. I also was part of a research program that basically believed that undergraduate students were capable of conducting postgraduate research and pushing paper out there. So at the time, I worked with that program, and I published my first paper when I was a junior or sophomore in college about disruptive innovations, trying to analyze those big trends in the market that will reshape the market versus entering as a new competition or something. So that would be like any of the revolutions we've seen, like the agricultural, the industrial, or the internet, and so on. Which is amazing because I don't know if you're tracking like the Nobel Prize winner for our most recent year. He was a professor from INSEAD who got the prize, and their publication was literally about disruptive innovations and creative destruction. And so I read that like diligently, because I was like, wow, like this is really like that idea. Of course, their value add is incredible on the mathematical models they created, but the core idea was literally the thing that I studied for an entire year during my college career. So that's like sort of like what I've been interested in. Even after graduating at Deloitte, I was trying to work with the marketing team, and I reached out. I cold messaged the chief cloud officer at Deloitte, pitching him an idea that, hey, we should be publishing like thought cases on emerging trends on LinkedIn and trying to see where we go with that. And he's like very like active on LinkedIn, tries to publish a lot of stuff. It didn't go through, but really he gave me like, hey, maybe you should start this with yourself, see how well you do it. I published, I think, 8 articles back in 2021. One of them actually was recognized by someone at the United Nations, and they reached out to me and they wanted to understand, hey, how can we use some of the technology that you're talking about for disaster relief? So some of those translated that way. Outside of that, I think my biggest extracurricular, which took a long time from my like working life, is probably just working on that startup of mine. It was also an automation startup. Basically, I wanted to build a tool and an automation tool that easily provides any government contractor within the US an exposure into government spendings. So if, let's say, you are maybe Deloitte, you are EY, and you're trying to see, well, how much do I have of this market from this specific department, US department, in terms of spending? Are they spending on this kind of projects versus this kind of projects? How much are my competitors grabbing from here and there? So I modeled all of that based on like a quick like automation where you would enter the department you're interested in, your company, and then it will model it for you. And that's sort of been like my interest for a while, because like I mean, to this day, to be honest, is like this automation industry and the roles that it exposes. So that's also been a huge deal for me. On the side, honestly, a lot of that I like reading philosophy. I like reading a lot of books. Even the engagement within the DC area, like I'm very involved with the Arab diaspora over here. Hence where how I even got to know Yanis, like through some of the Lebanese friends that I have in the area, and so on. So this really covers my main extracurriculars.
Great.
And sorry, what was the last
Give
one?
us one book, your favorite book. What's your favorite book?
Oof, okay. That's gonna be tough one. It's my favorite philosopher is Friedrich Nietzsche, and my favorite book by him is Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Not necessarily one that I would recommend for like someone interested in business and all of that, but again, I think on that realm, this is my favorite.
Okay, great. So, the target schools. What schools
Target.
did you target?
Awesome. So I think when I was thinking about it, like I told you, my primary focus has been don't miss on these years trying to get into an MBA. And I think this is like the perfect years to try to um, invest academically into evaluating what's going on. So I spread my exposure over multiple geographies, the US, outside of the US, for the top schools in all these geographies. So mainly in Europe, I applied to INSEAD and LBS. And in the rest of them were primarily in the US. So I applied on the East Coast mostly because that's where I live and sort of known the area and prefer overall. Close from family as well for personal reasons. So I applied to Duke, Harvard, MIT, Yale, and Columbia and NYU. And on the West Coast, I applied to Berkeley. So bringing the total to 9. And I don't know, it's not typical for someone. I think the average probably from anyone that I asked is like 3 to 5 schools that they're shooting for. Personally, again, I think my motives were different, is that, hey, I wanted not to miss this opportunity at this time. And each of these schools offered something that fit my criteria that despite some people arguing like, well, they're different sizes, they're different emphasis on academics and all that. I think to me, each of them fulfilled like a part that I wanted. Like the European ones, hey, I wanted to get that global international exposure. So that was an idea. For the US schools, for instance, MIT and Harvard, because of the emphasis on entrepreneurships. For schools like Yale, Duke, I think the culture and the kind of people that I've talked to, they were extremely like humble and collaborative. And so on. So I think each of those like universities, I probably missed one or two as well. They had something that I really wanted to get out of them, and I wanted to have like the choice ultimately to be able to figure out where did I fit in. Because as you're interviewing and going through the application, I think you get a sense, even from just really reviewing the applications, you get a sense of what each school wants and the character. It's like really like I tell people that might sound crazy, that the application of a school gives you a character of the school and what to expect later on. So that's what I was picking up on while I was applying to see later on if I get admission, which one do I want to proceed with.
Great, great, great. So, Mohammed, great profile, really. Great professional experience, great international experience. You lived in Iraq, Jordan, and the US. 29 years old, perfect age for an MBA. You are very educated person, so very interesting profile. Let's talk about the GMAT, which is a key part of the application. Could you walk me through your journey, how you were preparing before working with us, the results you achieved, your experience with our tutors, and the value they added, and your final score?
Amazing. Let's do it. So, how I prepped, I've had a very long journey with the GMAT, as you know, Annie. So I think I was very frustrated through multiple stages of like that journey. And I think it started with the most generic of like tools out there. So, are we name dropping or like no?
Yeah,
Like,
you can name, don't worry.
Okay. So these are like the Princeton Review I've tried, the Manhattan Prep. So any like popular ones that you know of, I've tried those, and mainly been going through their courses of the self-paced courses. So you have the course, you get through it, you do the exercises, and you get through that. And honestly, I think I've studied enough of that, and I delayed trying to take an official exam way too long. So my first advice is probably like try to get a sense of what your actual score is much earlier than what I did. I think I waited almost a year to try to get that first score. And I realized that at that point that I was hovering in the 500 range and I'm not able to break past it. And despite me, even like I think one of the courses they offered me a repeat at no expense. I was like, oh, okay, let me take it again. But it's the same results. It's like the same methodology and all this. So I started thinking is that there's a lot of advice online that, hey, like you can manage to break through the GMAT on your own with like your own study habits and all that. And I was like doing very much really good, I would say, like academically when I was in the classroom in college or in high school. So I thought that, hey, on my own, I can handle it. And I've never had a tutor, to be honest, in my entire life. But then I was like, well, if I'm getting the same like results following the same approaches, then something is off and I need to change that. Which is why at that point I was trying to look for a personal tutor, someone to actually talk to me and I could notice their skills. And that's when I got introduced to you through some of the friends in the DC area. And they're like, hey, there's like a friendly Lebanese dude. He like runs a business that works with students on that. So I reached out to you and we are like, okay, let's work through. And I was mainly interested in your tutoring service. And the idea that I think I pushed you on the first day is that, hey, I would like to be met where I'm at in terms of skill level versus a program that will assume, again, that I don't know anything, start from the basics. And I'm like, that's not where I'm at anymore. I'm like at a specific stage, maybe like upper mid prep level. And I think you and your tutors were able to pick on that. It's like, oh, we think by gauging some of your assessments is that, hey, you're at this level and this is where we're going to start. And I also reached out to you with a very limited time frame where the program, I think I only had 2 months to apply at that point, and I wanted to get through it. So I was very transparent with you about like, hey, we need to make this happen within this time frame. I think you were very motivating. Like, hey, like, yes, we can definitely try. It's going to be very hard on you, probably going to meet every single day versus like typically it's spread. And honestly, I agree. I think for anyone who's like looking at this, try to give yourself even more extended period of time so you get the most value out of the tutoring experience. To me, it was like the circumstances were different and I wanted to crunch them. So I started working with your tutors almost daily in the morning and trying to get through the time difference, but we made it work, to be honest. And I immediately started seeing improvements. I think, as I mentioned, I think I took the GMAT once before working with you. And then I took it 3 more times in that short time frame. I think every 3 weeks I was booking one. And I immediately broke into the 600 ranges, and I got 615 on the new GMAT format. And I was still not satisfied with the 615, so I did another course with you, and we worked through it a bit more up until I got 635, where I thought it's decent enough for what a lot of universities that I was interested in were looking for. So that's really where it has been, and I think overall, just even like, I don't know, I'm not sure if I shared this with you, but like I bonded so much with some of your tutors that were like still like messaging to this day. We chat and they were like not just emphasizing the academics of it or like how to approach it. They were motivating me every day when they saw that I was getting exhausted, but I was like still showing through. So I think that also like carried a huge weight that I don't really want to leave out. On top of it, it's just like the advice that I've gotten on like, hey, well, think about like the application maybe could be improved this way. Your target schools or how the criteria that you're approaching could be polished this way. So I think a lot of that also mattered. And these were like byproducts, I would say, of like the entire experience. So yeah, I think at that point, the last course was 635, and I used that to apply. And this is really what got me into a lot of these.
Great. So here we can see the difference between self-paced programs and one-to-one tutoring programs. Big difference, right? Because the professor can spot your weaknesses. He can give you personalized tips and tricks. He can give you personalized homeworks to improve on your weak areas. He can motivate you, coach you to give your best. It's a mental preparation. It's not only math techniques or verbal techniques. It's also mental. It's very important, especially if you are working in parallel and you have the stress of the work and the stress of the GMAT. So having this mental support is very important. So, great result. Now, let's talk about the essays, which are very important part of the application. What advice would you give to our listeners on how to write compelling essays, structure them effectively, and convince the admissions committee to invite you for an interview?
Amazing. So this is you're spot on. I think this is one of like the biggest deal about your application. And I think if you're targeting an MBA, you're probably someone who is interested in the business world and what it has to offer. And I think rule number one is from a lot of leaders that we see out there, whether politicians, business owners, is that the common theme across all of them is that they're great storytellers. If we see anyone like I think there's a lot of like academic examples about Steve Jobs and what made Apple take off and him as a character and a leader is just being able to tell a story that would appeal to so many individuals, whether it's investors or people who want to support you in one way or another. So I think I've recognized that through like my professional experience. I wouldn't say that when I was applying to undergrad, I valued it as much. But at this stage, I was like, if I'm gonna break into anything in this world, I need to be a really good storyteller. And it's not necessarily that, hey, oh, Mohammed, you had some experiences that helped you push through that. I think it's just the way that you tell a lot of these experiences. Like anyone can chat with me and I'm like, wow, like you're not recognizing that this is could be you. Like you could say that in a much better way and get a lot more traction with it. So I think this is like my main emphasis is that when I was approaching any of those applications, I was trying to, like I was saying earlier, gauge where what the emphasis of this application, what is the common theme that this school is looking for, and see how my theme or like personal theme that I came up with fits it. And it's not necessarily like me trying to tailor my story just like to what the university is looking, because they're not trying to get you to write something that just sounds nice to them. You should be really transparent and tell your story the way you want to tell it, but in a way that also corresponds to what they're looking for. And there was another piece about it, which is like like I told you, like I had I would say a little bit like of a sensitive background and like where I grew up and how we moved around. There was a part of me that generally does not tell that story that much. But then most recently, like I was reading a book also called Revealing. It was by a author called Leslie John, I believe. And she conducted research on the value that, or let me reset this. She conducted research to evaluate the outcomes of people undersharing in conversations versus oversharing in conversations. And she noticed that a lot of people tend to undershare because they're trying to protect themselves. They're not trying to say too much to like bother others or be controversial. But that had an extreme like negative impact because people around you are not trusting you that much with with your approach, and they can immediately push on it. So she was like, why aren't people more afraid of undersharing than oversharing? Because there are people who are like, oh no, don't overshare because you're gonna embarrass yourself or say things that are not appropriate. Not really. And she's not advocating that, hey, we should like be overshares in a crazy way, but no, that there is a balance that you shouldn't really be too the person holding on that much and trying to get others to distrust you, and you should share in an appropriate manner. But that also pushed me to be like, well, no, I'm gonna overshare on certain ideas, and I'm gonna elaborate and be vulnerable as much as I can on certain ideas to show my character, because ultimately a lot of people behind all of these doors, they're evaluating and you're reading about you, and they're trying to get a sense of who you are. What is your character? So if that character comes out without you actually showing your face or sitting in an interview, you won. They're gonna want to meet with you and send you an interview invite. So this is really like what my take was on a lot of the essays in general. Now, if we're trying to specify the schools, I know I'm not gonna get through all 9, but I think the common theme across the 9 has been, like I said earlier, each university has a character that's projected by that application. So for instance, this is also me being a nerd. Like I tried to see for US schools, my word count per school when I was writing was around 1,200 words for all of the essays. For European ones, there were 2,400. So the European programs give you a lot more room to express so many different areas if you want to take full advantage of all of the sections that there are. Also, the European ones were more about emphasizing the value of international exposure. So this is what they want to see. It's like, hey, your experiences, the languages you speak, why are you even interested in these opportunities or that international exposure. Versus US schools, they had also different themes. Let's say, I would say Yale, Duke, Berkeley, and NYU, they were very heavy on your character, your value add, how diverse you are, your background, things like that they valued a lot. Meanwhile, you have like the Harvard and MIT. They emphasize a lot of you as a leader, you as a professional. Also, like there is an emphasis on like your background intentions, but I would say the weight changes between these schools, where the weight for Harvard and MIT on being a leader or being accomplished on a professional level are valued much more from at least the distribution of questions and what they're asking for. So this is really like the patterns that I picked up. And again, I'm not like a professional like advisor on any of this. This is really just the personal like recognition, because I like to like psychoanalyze sometimes with like when I see materials like, hey, what is going on here? What is this person getting at? So I think this is where I've got from these different organizations like, hey, this is what they're after here and there.
Excellent summary. Thank you. So now let's talk about the interview process. Could you walk us through your experience in detail, school by school, quickly? What types of questions were you asked? How challenging was each interview? And which one did you find the most challenging?
Good question. Okay. So I think school by school, again, I probably stick to the themes that I've established because a lot of them are like similar. So like the INSEAD and LBS, to my earlier point, the interview, which similar to their application, much longer. So they give you more room to elaborate, but also means that you had to share a lot. You had to have a lot of stories to like not duplicate what you just said or come up with the same. And that's all in the sense of you're trying to show more of your character at the end of the day. So a lot of people, honestly, even personally, I would prefer it as like, hey, give me more chances to show who I am versus like a limited time. The kind of questions that I've got from LBS and INSEAD is like a lot about my international experience and my interest in having another international experience that was heavily emphasized. The US schools, again, there was the distribution of some of the schools had like student-led interviews. So like Yale, Duke, Berkeley, they had like formal students who are interviewing. So I would say they went a little bit, they were more casual than other schools. And I felt like, again, they eased up my stress and I was able to get through them much easier because it's like someone who was in your shoe a few years ago and they're trying to like really help you, just trying to evaluate, hey, who are you? Could they see themselves being like a classmate of yours if you were at the same year? That kind of really like approach. And they would always like, I would say the common theme is that, hey, why do you want our school and why are you interested in? I think that's like goes without saying that's the top question they ask. And simultaneously, there's the part about just each of the schools I picked up that they realize that there are limitations to their school. So like, let's say if a school is not located in the best area in the US, it's like, hey, it's not a main metropolitan area. They're probably going to ask you a question is like, is this going to matter to you? Or like, why did you want us despite this thing? So you should also think about like what might be the negatives around it. And again, negatives is like a strong word, but from the perspective of each individual and their preferences, hey, why do you still want the school despite certain things that others might critique it for? And lastly, I think the MIT and HBS, the difference with their interviews was like also a lot more emphasized around the accomplishment part. And to your question, Anissa, about which one was the hardest, I would say Harvard is like notorious for being the hardest interview, and that was still my experience.
Give me more details. Give me more details about Harvard.
I think so. It's a very much 30 minutes interview, and there's no like you don't go back and ask the interviewer questions or you give like a prolonged intro of yourself. They have a dedicated set of questions that they want to ask you. The person who's interviewing you had read your entire profile, so they are very familiar with who you are. And they're sort of just wrapping up their notes to pitch it to the committee that makes the decision. So sort of they're there to like solve for a puzzle. It's like, hey, we have missing things about you and we're trying to get to it. And that's what the interview is really about. So my experience is like, it was very intense in terms of like, hey, this is someone who knows everything about you and they're trying to get final details. There's only 30 minutes and they're going to push through all of these and they expect you to like respond to them quickly. So I think that was like the intensity of that was tough, but at the same time, I enjoyed it a lot. Again, it depends on like what your preferences are. I think it was very rapid Q&A, and even like just an example of like what I experienced that toward the tailor end or later end of the interview, we had 1 minute left in the 30 minutes, and they're very serious about ending it at 30. There's no like back and forth. That 1 minute, I got asked one more question. It was like about because I mentioned like I liked publications and I like random facts. They were like, "Oh, okay, so give us like one of the things that you would publish or like a random facts to like teach me something today." And I had 1 minute to just like answer that. And I came up, I don't know, my mind was like so tired from the 29 minutes. I picked probably one of the like most complex facts that I know about the world, and I had to share it in just like that 1 minute. So, but it all went well, honestly, because I met my interviewer later on during admitted student weekend. And she told me, she was like, I'm still using your fun fact to this day. So I was like, okay, like it paid off, even though I thought this
What
was
was your
gonna
answer?
break.
What was your answer about this?
Sure. It was so it's something also I told you like I like maybe philosophy, science. There's something in science or under the a thermodynamics law called entropy, which is basically a measure of chaos. So my I was reading something where ultimately there is a universal pattern where any system in the world, whether it's the universe, some sort of machine, a locked system, they're trying to optimize for entropy. And that is how the world is made, I guess. And entropy, as I mentioned, is trying to optimize for chaos. And that pushes anything in the world, like where does chaos stem from? It stems from death. It stems from, it's a very morbid like idea that makes people like a bit sad to think about is that, hey, your entire universe is trying to die because that's how it optimizes for chaos. But there's on the positive end of all that is that any living organism is actually trying to minimize the chaos. So your body and the way you are today is trying to keep you alive by establishing systems, flows, things that are very like perfect, even plants or animals. And all of these organisms, they're defying an actual universal law out there that's trying to optimize for this, which is mind-blowing to think that we are the only creatures or things that are defying that. So whenever people look at like, hey, a meaning of life or trying to be interested in like what is out there, and they look to the universe, honestly, you're more probably like your inner self and you as a human being has a lot more value than that because you are the single organism that's defying all of this, what the universe is trying to ultimately accomplish by optimizing for chaos.
Excellent answer, actually. Excellent. Great. Yes, so you applied to 9 schools, right? You got the admission to all the 9 or not? Or
It's been 6 admissions, 2 wait lists, and 1 rejection.
so 6 admissions. What are the
Correct.
6 admissions?
So the admissions were from INSEAD, LBS, Duke, Yale, MIT, and Harvard.
Okay. And the wait list, you are still on wait list or not?
Still on the wait list, actually. It's still on the wait list. That's from NYU and Berkeley.
Okay.
And
And
one
rejected from.
rejection, that's CBS, Columbia.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
A bit surprising because Harvard is much more selective.
I
And
think I've heard something about, and again, I don't know, I can't confirm any of this, but about a yield rate where certain schools would not want to hurt their admission if they think that they're going to give you an offer and you reject it. That hurts their metrics. So sometimes if they suspect that you're applying to, again, this is, I'm
yeah.
not sure I can confirm
Okay.
any of this, but yeah, there's
Okay.
an idea about that yield rate impact.
Okay. So, Mohammed, great. I have a very interesting question. So you applied to 9 very, very competitive schools. You got 6 admissions out of 9. I want to know, why do you think you got these 6 admissions? I've seen a lot of candidates with 665, 705, 725 on the GMAT, with great academics, and they still didn't manage to get Harvard. So tell me the secret, in your opinion. Why did they choose you?
Good question. So the honest answer, let's start. I'll give you 3 answers. The honest answer is I don't know, and I don't think I'll ever know. I think it's the secret rests with the admission teams of each of these universities. The second question I'll give you is the answer that I got when I asked some of the admission officers after I got into some of the schools. And again, it's not probably the most satisfying one, but they just said you're a well-rounded candidate. And I think that's what they've given me, is that there's not like, hey, this is specifically you wrote this on your essay or this is your score or something like that. No, it was just well-rounded. And the third question, answer, I would say, and probably the one you're more interested in, is what I think about it. And honestly, the way I've looked at it is, from everything that I've given you in this interview, is that I tried to really optimize for any opportunity that I had for the things that these schools were interested in. Is that if they wanted an essay, I tried to pour my heart into, like, this has got to be like the best essay that I write. It's the best and most compelling story, and I'm gonna portray it out there. The extracurriculars, the listings of the score, so on and so forth. And what tied them all together goes back to the idea of showing my character to the admission team through a story that tells them that, hey, this is from baby Mohammed, grew up here, progressed that way, and there is a trajectory for the journey that he's taking. And I think that's what really added up to it, that even to the point where the areas that I was not most confident about, I used the optional essay questions to try to talk about them. So I was like very upfront. I was like, well, you're going to find probably people who are like maybe smarter than me on this category or something like that. But I've done also XYZ, and I think this is where it shows. So I think just even utilizing there's areas where you're predicting what could be used against you or your candidacy to show for, as if you're like, I don't know, maybe a politician running for office, where you're like, well, if you have problems or reservations about this aspect, well, I have XYZ, and this is where I'm gonna, like, this is the one opportunity for me to defend myself and show you that I can still prove myself here. So I think trying to overall, like in summary, I think that the answer here is trying to optimize for all of these sections, trying to show your character across all of them, and telling that story that of progression and where you started, where you're going, and assuring the school that you're applying to that you're really going to be a value add. Because if your trajectory maintains or stays at the same rate where you've gotten to them, then they want to make a bet on you. If they're investing in someone like you are a winning stock that's going to jump up. And that's the assurance that a lot of investors probably adopt, is that they want to see your past performance and predict that, hey, this is where you're going to make it after you go with them.
Exactly. If you want my opinion, I think there are profiles academically and professionally and GMAT-wise definitely better than you. But you stand out in terms of uniqueness. Your profile is unique. You try to go outside of the box. And these type of people who are who's gonna change the world. I mean, if someone is good academically, if someone went to the best school, if someone did everything just in a direct way, without trying to look outside of the box, he'll probably end up a software engineer at Meta, making good money, and that's it. But people who are gonna change the world are people who look outside of the box, and I think you are one of them. As we can see, you are well educated, you read a lot, you have ideas, you try to do your startup, you worked in a startup, you are unique, and this type of persons can change the world. And I think they are looking for this type of people, and not people who are just good academically and who went to good schools, get good grades, and get good GMAT, and followed the rules. I mean, I think they value someone like you who like to just look outside of the box. Okay.
Thank you. This is like, honestly, it's beautifully said. So thanks for
I've
saying
interviewed
that.
a lot of people, Mohammed. I've interviewed a lot of people, a lot of successful candidates, and this is what I can tell you, because we've worked with people who got 735 on the GMAT. It's 100 points above, and they didn't get admitted into Harvard. They didn't get the admission because we didn't feel this uniqueness in their profile. They didn't express it well. We just felt that they are just good people, good academically, good within the rules. They want someone that he is good, but also outside of the rules, who can break the norms and get into places normal people can't get. So really, now with the interview, I know why they chose you, because of your personality and what you've achieved in your life. Great,
Thank
Mohammed. So let's talk about scholarships. Did you manage to secure any? Could you tell me how much you received from each school, approximately, of course?
Absolutely. Three scholarships in total. From LBS, about 50K in US dollars.
Wow,
Um,
nice.
and from Duke, 60K. Uh, from Yale, it was a full tuition
Wow,
coverage.
nice.
Uh, so these were the three scholarships that I got.
So it's interesting. You've got Yale with 100% scholarship, and you got rejected from Columbia. Uh,
Yeah. It
okay.
is very
So
interesting, I
yeah,
agree.
yeah, 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 yeah. So so uh, which school did you choose, Mohammed? A lot of people will say to me, Anis, I got 100% scholarships. I will go there because they appreciated me. They gave me scholarship. They gave me it's a lot of money.
Mhm.
MBA tuition, it's six figures.
Yep.
Uh, Tell me, which school did you choose and why? I know it's a hard decision. Uh, Tell me, how did you think about it and all your nerd calculations?
That's a great question, honestly, and it was a really tough decision. Like, I'm not gonna lie and say, "Hey, this was like, oh, I knew always." I think the first answer is I chose Harvard over all these other schools. The first disclaimer, like a lot of people would say, I think I need to make it as well because I've experienced like applying to all these schools, communicating with all of them. They're all great schools. Ultimately, I think a lot of people would tell you you should pick the schools that fits you the most and what you're trying to get out of it. If you're applying for an MBA, you want it for something. You want to use this credentials, the education, and so on for something. So I think you should evaluate that goal and be like, okay, which is the school that's going to equip me the most for it? And it's not going to matter at that point. Hey, you've decided to make this investment. So regardless of like the money that you're getting, and again, maybe it depends on your financial situation as well. So there's the as a state of where you are and also the goals that you're trying to tackle. If you factor all of these in, I think the decision will be easy. To me, I picked Harvard because number one, I think the brand name that everyone is going to talk to, whether it's at the US base or internationally, I don't think I've seen any school that came close from that. And if you've spoken to me like from Mohammed like a few years ago, I did not used to value these things as much. And I used to be actually very against like, oh, what is a brand name and what is marketing and all of that. But honestly, as like the year goes by and you have exposure to the world, you realize that the world high has like natural biases in it. And sorry, like I reference a lot of books, but there's another one by Daniel Kahneman, who's also like a Nobel Prize winner, Thinking Fast and Slow. And he talks about this whole idea, system one, system two. So it's natural that people have system one, which is more impulsive, more prejudice in a way, and it's gonna make them have like preconceived notion of who you are and things about you from minimal information. So I think to try to optimize, like I tell you, love to solve like optimization problems. Is that going to a school like that with that brand recognition would be an easy gateway to get you into a lot of opportunity, not necessarily make you succeed at them, but get you to the door of individuals who are going to speak with you. And I think that was like unmatched. Beside that, I did not like also like just rely on this. I think just like the validation process also took a while of me going to the schools and trying to visit them and speak to the people and see how they ran the program of like for the admitted students. So I went to the Harvard one about 2 months ago, and honestly, compared to other schools that I went to, with the added disclaimers that they're great, I think Harvard was a different tier. That's why I also like when I see the rankings of like the schools, I don't necessarily agree with it. I saw your LinkedIn post about it also, and I agreed with that a lot. Because if you go and you experience, you're like, no, this school is a totally different tier from what we're saying. And what I mean by that specifically for Harvard, because I picked it, I think from an educational standpoint, MBAs are not known to be like, hey, the curriculum is what we're going to focus on. But for someone like me who's interested in academics, no, I think Harvard is like places a huge emphasis on the academics through the case method, where they tell you in 2 years you're gonna read 500 cases. So what sort of thing when you graduate that people can't throw your way, you won't be able to evaluate it in limited period of time. Beside that, just like the vast or sheer vastness of how much they want you there, and they show you that. Like some of the universities, without naming names, I gotta admit it, and that was it. Like, did not get much of a follow-up until the deadline of it. Harvard, to a large extent, had someone who's like dedicated to follow up with me, trying to connect with me, trying to see. He's like, hey, what are you trying to understand? Who do you want us to connect you to? What can we make happen for you to come with us? So when you see all of this, like also it's like, wow, like they really understand this system of a business environment. What are the pillars that makes it interesting? We spoke about earlier, like, hey, what values in the new age? And I think relationships and connections is what values in a lot of these senses. Harvard understands all that. It's the oldest MBA and to a large extent. Again, it's not just like propaganda of them saying, oh, we're the oldest, all that. You go to these events and you see it implemented, and you're going to hear a lot of like the common phrase, across a lot of people who got into it, or even people at Harvard today, is that the team over there is very deliberate and intentional about a lot of things that they put you through. So if they sat you in a lecture hall with specific individual or programmed something or had you listen to a lecture, it's intentional. They want this in a specific time, in a specific day, to make a specific impression on you, which again, I don't think that I've seen that level of calculation for someone who like values like these intricacies of what is the approach here. I think that was the biggest seller to me. And again, at the end of the day, there were our schools, but that was the seller.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mohammed. So we'll discuss also about AI. I know we've discussed a bit at the beginning, but I want to elaborate more. So we are currently seeing major developments in the AI sector. We see companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and others transforming entire industries. Many traditional sectors, including software, cybersecurity, are already being disrupted. AI is also expected to significantly impact banking, management consulting, and other sectors. In this context, many people are questioning whether an MBA is still relevant in the AI era. What are your thoughts on this? So we discussed already about relationships and network. So what do you think? What can we add to this conversation more than the network and the relationships?
Absolutely. I think the main component that's outside of just like the network connections is like what I referenced to as getting into a program that's trying to make sense of this revolution and try to study it and capitalize on the rooms for growth here. Is that if you're part of any other program, I would say, and that's why I'm arguing for an MBA in this instance, is that if you're learning a very specialized skill, then you are, I would say, you're taking much bigger risk than someone who's trying to be the generalist, trying to make sense of what this trend is. So again, to the theme of betting on stocks, if you're trying to dedicate these 2 years to try to understand, hey, what is the movement of these like sets of stocks and where should I invest my time, my resources, my skills, then you need this period where you're surrounded by an environment that's trying to make sense of it. Versus the alternative, which is like trying to do it on your own. Again, I'm pretty sure others might be capable of that, but what resources would you get outside or on your own through your day job and limited like time that you can dedicate to that, to understanding and making an emphasis on it. So all this to say is that when I looked at it, and it might not be the best analogy, but the way I look at it is that today feels like 1999 for the internet, but for AI, which I know a crash came after, which is like not the best of years, but simultaneously, when we look at it, is that in 1999, that was the development in the internet. So many people jumped on that wagon and took advantage of it. Like the one example I mention all the time is that if Amazon at the time started with a bookstore selling online books, and then it developed into the conglomerate that it is today, well, it just rode on the wave that was known to be the next revolution, and it stuck to it. It added value despite the disruptions, despite the fallout of 2000 and so on. So I think if we're thinking that this is a new realm or a new revolution right here, then we just need to ride on this wave, add value through businesses or employments that we see are going to continue to add value, and I think take advantage of it and not view it as a risk, but an actual thing that you can capitalize on. But I would say if I did not take this step and just sat down and wasn't sure, being afraid of what's to come, I don't think there's like the probability of me making it or not would have been zero, versus now I have a fighting chance to see how is the world gonna change and have an opportunity to participate in that and hopefully take advantage of it.
Great, great, great. Thank you so much for being here today, Mohammed. Extremely rich conversation. Thank you so much and congratulations. You got a very good score, very good GMAT score. You got admitted into 6 out of 9 top MBA programs in the world. Congrats again. And for those who are interested in preparing the GMAT one-to-one tutoring with our team, preparing the essays and the interviews, your CV, your whole application, you can find my WhatsApp number and my email in the description of this video. Don't hesitate to contact me. So, Mohammed, thank you so much again, and see you guys in the next video.
Thank you so much, Anis. Thanks, everyone.